Well, good afternoon, everybody. Today we have with us Brian Miller, who is the Executive Vice President of the Building Industry Association of Northern Kentucky. Brian, so much to talk about about your organization and your members, but let's start off by what is the Building Industry Association all about? And I know that you used to have an old name and you changed that some time ago, but give us an update on what your organization is all about.
Yeah, so we were originally called the Home Builders Association of Northern Kentucky. Little known fact, for a very short period of time, we were actually part of the Cincinnati Association. They formed a little study group and thought it would be a good idea to form a chapter here, and we liked it so much we split off, became our own association. But for years and decades, since 1955, we were the Home Builders Association. And just about, I want to say 7 years ago, we changed our name to the Building Industry Association of Northern Kentucky to more encapsulate who our true membership is. So it's not just home builders. Matter of fact, only about 70 of our members actually build homes out of our 700 member companies. The rest of them are supply companies, other supply houses, automobile companies. But then more and more in the last decade, we've been representing more of the interests of the commercial industrial builder developer community. And so in that vein, we needed to change our name to be able to welcome those folks into the fold and better encapsulate the entire scope of the people that we do represent.
So really, everyone who is building, investing, and growing this economy from the ground up is obviously a great opportunity to be a member of your organization. And it continues to grow. One of the things with COVID, maybe you could speak to the issues that you had to address in dealing with your members, both either wanting to continue to be in business and the struggles they've had to deal with in dealing with COVID.
Well, a lot of folks know that we do work with not just with our members, but also represent them in government too. You were the recipient of one of my kind phone calls the very first week just to make sure that we were declared an essential service, which we were with the governor's office. That we're thankful for. I think all but about 4 states kept all construction and related industries to support the construction as an essential service. But thereafter, we started working immediately with local governments. So we started calling on planning commissions, on building departments, then on county and city governments to see what protocols were going to go in place rather quickly to make sure that we didn't skip a beat and that folks that did want to continue on building and continue the building business would be able to do so throughout the pandemic as it set in. So as time went on, we began to branch that out and provided services for our members, working with state government, but also working with our delegation in Washington, D.C. to work through the nuances of the payroll protection program, as well as the emergency industrial disaster loan program, and to help our members understand the nuances and the changes with regards to the tax code too. So for the first couple of months, the work schedule was extremely intense, trying to get information out to our members and those in the construction industry in Northern Kentucky, and then represent them on their behalf so they could go back to work while we worked with them to help establish protocols throughout the region. So much so that I woke up in the middle of the night one Monday morning at 3 o'clock saying, "Oh my gosh, I hope our guys are doing what they're supposed to do." So they saw the association manager out there in work boots in the mud, making sure that everybody was socially distant. That if they were closer in proximity to one another, that they were using masks. And the process, although it was speedy and rather bumpy, went into effect rather quickly. I think within a week, everybody was on board, and the governor's office was very happy with what they were seeing, And it was also in a working group, including yourself and the Northern Kentucky Health Department. And it's been amazing how little, if absolutely no, cases of COVID-19 there are out on job sites today.
And really, none of that was known up front, right? I mean, there was a worry. You wanted to advocate for your members to keep them open, but also realizing and you care about their employees, their teams. And thank God that there has been the few limited cases, almost no cases out of the construction industry. But I can tell you, I'm sure, I'm asking you too to maybe relay some story, but I'm sure that you had members calling up thinking, dear God, if I get closed down and cannot continue to operate for weeks, months, whatever, but maybe speak to that a bit because that's real fear.
Yeah, so right up front, the very first 2 weeks, after the first week went by and we got these emergency orders put in place, that Monday morning, we started calling our registered builders. And so there's about 50 of them, and they are residential home builders, and wanted to see what their protocols were. So quickly, our larger builders already had protocols in place, and they had written guidelines, and some of our smaller guys, they have to do everything for a living. They're not compartmentalized in their businesses. They really didn't know where to turn because they don't have an HR department. So we started putting together webinars rather for them via this format in order to get that information. turn to our residential remodeling. So that's a little bit of a different game. You're walking into somebody's home that they're already living in, and wanted to see what they were going through. We were pleasantly surprised that not just residential builders were not as busy as what they were weeks prior, but they had not fallen off the end of the map with regards to traffic flow or buyers. But the residential remodelers had a whole different scope of things to concern about. So they had buyers that had relatives inside the home with compromised immune systems. Those jobs were getting pushed off. Those folks that were backlogged, that were younger, that weren't all that worried, they still understand that a good protocol would help protect them. They welcomed them in. So it was a lot more scheduling on their behalf. But it looks like residential remodeling continue to tick up. We are seeing some changes with regards to homes nationwide and especially locally. We're starting to hear a lot of requests for folks that were living in high-rise apartments or condos starting to move out of those areas and look at the suburbs again as a place where they can be close to health care, but at the same time have their own single-family detached home. We believe that the future of senior living facilities are going to look different given what has happened in the last few months. But this is a society changer, as you probably know. Never would I have thought that I would have had 60 conferences over an iPad and a desktop in the last 3 months. But we have. I've had an entire national association, nationwide conference be done like this too. But at the same time too, we had to make sure we were taking this seriously. Like you said, we want to make sure that our subcontractors on job sites understood exactly how serious this was, and not just for their own safety, but for the safety and the mental well-being of the folks around them too. Even if there were 5 of them in a home and they're all socially distant and they're in different rooms, just the perception of having 5 pickup trucks out in the driveway makes somebody next door scared. So we want to make sure that they're spreading their vehicles out too. So, in a time of fear, we don't want to add anything to it. So we understand we are good neighbors. We are good business people. Our members are outstanding people, good family-run businesses. And we want to take sure that we take the entire community's worries into consideration.
That's a great point. And, one of the things people are now seeing too is that with the potential changes coming out of COVID, what's the market look like for new housing? Can I buy a house when I want it? Can I buy, you're not the realtor side of the equation, but what does the housing market look like right now coming through this COVID pandemic?
Right. Well, we're not the Realtor Association. It's an outstanding organization here in Northern Kentucky. Also, we do stay abreast, obviously, as to what's going on in what we term the secondary market, which is the resale market. But just like folks are worried about allowing remodelers to come into their home, there's people that are worried about anybody coming into their home. So listings are down because they know if they want to list a house, a lot of times somebody's going to have to walk through it. And they don't know, because they have to be out of the house during that showing, they don't know what's been left behind. And so they're not very comfortable with thinking, what was touched? Was it cleaned up? Am I going to be catching something for somebody coming through? So the overall listing picture has been decreasing. Well, at the same time, people have been looking at their 4 walls of their homes that they don't maybe necessarily enjoy to begin with. Those folks who would probably move in the next 2 years have now experienced that condition in a very much more intensified manner over the past 3-4 months. And so the demand has definitely picked up. So they've got an older home or a home that maybe their lifestyle's changed and evolved out of. If you're stuck home during the holidays for a couple of weeks with an empty nester and a 4,000 square foot home, that's one thing. But if you're forced to shelter in place for 4 or 5 months and you're an empty nester, you become extremely attuned to what your situation is. Or especially if you've got school-age kids and you're all sheltered at home and everything's being done through non-traditional instruction. And say if you've got 3 kids and a husband and wife in a small place, that could be very, very uncomfortable during a holiday season. But imagine going through that for 3, 4, 5 months. So there's extreme heightened awareness of what people need. And as a result of the lower listings, the demand level for newly built homes built by a local registered builder is definitely on the rise, extremely healthy.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I take away from that is, you're very connected to the real estate market, watching that. You see the impact of COVID, and then now the impact of what it's going to take to people saying, hey, I'm ready. I can't get anything else, and I want to be a little more space or the proper level of space for my family, so I want to build new. So what does that look like in the market right now, Brian? So you represent this side of the river, but do you see availability for spots for the type of home that people are buying? Your builders are building what people are wanting ideally. What does that look like today, and what's the market look like, you think, in the next 18 months or so?
So we spend a lot of time working with our national association here at the local level. We're very tapped in. And so what we're hearing is that we're going to have to be flexible because the demand is going to come and it may not be necessarily clear from day one. And so the stuff that we're starting to hear in changes in homes are not just, am I going to have a home office, but am I going to have two home offices? Mm-hmm. I think the trend with companies is that they've figured out that people are able to work out of home and be trusted at the same time that they're going to be able to get things done. It cuts down on commute times. It cuts down on national travel if you don't have to do it. It cuts down on expenses. The workday becomes actually longer from a sum of things because you don't have to drive to the office. You don't have to drive to lunch. You don't have to drive home afterwards. It's a rather intense schedule. I've never worked so much before my entire life working from home. I thought that I would have a hard time getting things done. But what I found out is that there was no breaks. It was just one thing after the other. It was extremely intense. And I'm glad to get back to the office and actually slow down a bit, comparatively speaking, to what it was like being at home. But those two offices we're starting to hear about. We're starting to hear a lot more questions about home gyms. You know, my commercial gym shut down. I don't want to stop exercising, and exercise and fitness has gotten to be so much more important when it comes to people's immune systems. Yep. So it's those real key things coming out of that we're starting to see, these work at home scenarios as well as home health. People are asking more and more about the systems inside the homes. You have to see, a lot of work that you're in, heating and air. We're seeing a lot of questions about filtration systems, but also energy efficiency still seems to be king. We want to have something that we can depend on. And getting down to a monthly bill, which I can relatively estimate to know what it's going to be like versus an older house where it's leaks an awful lot and you've got wild swings in heating and air. People want dependability and they really want safety right now.
That's a great point. So tell me, it's coming out of this. You've now seen this as unlike anything else that any of us have dealt with in our careers. You think COVID, but what do you think in terms of the organization? What's the one thing you think that Northern Kentuckians need to know about Building Industry Association today that they otherwise would not have known about? One big takeaway.
I think a big part of that is one, the fact that we do represent commercial industrial builder developers, and so what we've seen with them is that there's a lot of manufacturers that kind of eased up a little bit because they don't know what the demand's going to look like. But as that comes back, it looks like it may come back pretty quickly once these restrictions eventually ease up. That we'll see good news for them. And we've been advocating on their behalf to find available land because the boom that's been going off in Northern Kentucky, especially surrounding the Amazon Prime Air Hub that I drive past every day, it's construction evolution. We're just seeing people that want to move their companies here at an accelerated pace to make sure there's enough industrial zone land that has infrastructure driven to it in order to get through. One of the things that we do that a lot of people are getting ready to hear an awful lot about is we started this week spending a considerable amount of money in the market is the expansion of our Enswell Building Institute. So that's a trade school that we've had since 1950. I want to say 1965. So we've been in operations over 50 years. 1967. I'm sorry. I just recall our first carpentry class was in 1967. So it's been operating for 50 some odd years now. And we are expanding our facility in Boone County by 5,000 square feet. The addition is almost complete. Those will house laboratories for diesel mechanics for construction. So we're not trying to do what a Gateway does or say what another mechanic shop does to teach people. What we want to be able to build upon that to say, okay, what happens once this piece of diesel machinery gets off the road? Nobody else teaches that. We're being tied into our employers the way we are, be able to supply them with skilled tradespeople to be able to service their equipment that they need right now. We're doubling the size of our carpentry lab. We are bringing a masonry lab on that will be able to house 16 students at one time. We are bringing home a welding lab with 12 bays. We'll be able to teach almost virtually any type of welding except for underwater welding. I just don't have the water techs around here for it. But you can learn definitely the basics into the intermediate parts of welding. But then we'll also have our traditional schools courses like electric and HVAC and plumbing, as well as facilities maintenance. And so that's one big piece of exciting news. And coming soon, we will be opening up a second location in Campbell County. We're yet to announce that location, but our plans have changed a little bit, but a good opportunity has come online with a facility that was put out of service last year. And then next year, we'll also be housed in the evenings in the Area Technology Center in Campbell County for adults in that $11 million large facility. So lots of exciting things going on. It's a nationwide award-winning program, and one of the very few that are run under the auspices of the National Association of Home Builders.
So I think that the recap there to me, Brian, is, you've got this great organization that advocates for hundreds of members in construction and building industry world. But you've got this thing that's really going to be blossoming even more than the past 50 years for educating those who want to get trained in to have a job, a lifelong career in an industry that is not duplicative to Gateway or Northern. It's complementary to whatever might be going on there. To really help people succeed and get a job. So when they want to reach out to your organization in Boone County, your office is there. Anytime people, they'll see your contact here. But I just want to say thanks for the great work that you've been doing with your leadership and the great work of the organization as a whole for all of Northern Kentucky. Really want to say thank you to all that.
Thank you, too. And if anybody gets a chance, they can also check out the school's website, and that is at buildinginstitute.com.
Perfect. Sounds good, sir. We'll have you back and keep chatting more about all the great successes and hopefully get through this thing safely with great success to all your members.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian.